For the sake of everyone's time and make sure we have plenty of time for this great discussion today, I'll go ahead and get kicked off. I'm Sarah Wilkins. I'm Reverb COO. If you're unfamiliar with Reverb, we are an HR and leadership development consulting firm based in Seattle, although we have clients all over and consultants all over as well. We do kind of interim and fractional HR support, as well as leadership development and leadership coaching, working with kind of scaling businesses and nonprofits. And for those, I should share also that we are a certified B Corp now, and are very excited to be able to kind of say that and commit to those commitments that we made. So anyway, so today we are, before we dive in, we're going to be talking about some of the top 5 things we're hearing as far as HR goes. But first, wanted to thank our sponsors who you can see on the slide that Kylie is sharing. They are all people that we work with and we personally trust, and they've allowed us to be able to put these meetings on and over the last several years. So it's been great. We have such great speakers, such great content, and our sponsors are amazing. So if anyone wants to unmute and wave and say hello, if you're from any of our sponsor organizations, I see Jer and Andrew.
Yeah, Jer and Andrew, we're both from Parker Smith and Fake. We've been working with you guys for, well, Reverb for years since you guys started. So it's been a great partnership, and thanks for keeping us involved in this.
Thank you so much. And I think I saw Josh join as well. So Josh is with Carney Badley Spellman. So hi,
Yeah,
Josh.
hi, Josh Brittingham with Carney Badley Spellman. Yeah, very happy to support this, and I'm an employment attorney.
And very helpful. So thank you. Well, great. And I'm not sure anyone from Parker staffing is here, but if you are, you can say hello. Otherwise we'll get kicked off. So anyway, yeah, so like I mentioned, today we are talking about the top 5 things we hear HR focusing on right now. We did this based on a survey of our consultants and our collective experiences talking to different clients and supporting different clients in this space. So I have 2 of our amazing Reverb consultants, Kim Freeman and Kendra Wilson, joining me today. They are going to share what they're hearing and their perspective, and we hope you enjoy. We love questions. So if we have some created, but if you have them, throw them in the chat. I'll be moderating that. And you can also, if there's a pause, we can unmute and you can ask your question as well. So kind of the 5 things that we landed on that we wanted to talk about, because there could be a list of, 100 things, but the 5 that we wanted to narrow in on after we had a conversation were around compensation, compliance, hybrid work, benefits, and AI and HR. So those are kind of be the focus areas of our talk today. So yeah, so thank you, Kim. Thank you, Kendra. Glad to have
You're
you.
welcome.
Great. So let's start first by discussing compensation. So I know that's always a topic that's at the top of the list for everyone. And so Kim, can you start by letting me know what themes you're seeing in regards to compensation and, HR's priorities around compensation?
I absolutely can. Thank you so much. So in 2024, compensation themes are still being influenced by economic conditions. We know at the end of last year, we started to have a slowdown industry-wide. And so that going into 2024, that's still pretty relevant for compensation themes with the economic conditions and even the shifts in the workplace dynamics in terms of remote work, hybrid work, and all of the other things in between. And so with the continued prevalence of remote work, organizations have had to look at their compensation structures and revamp their compensation structures and their salary bands. And they've had to make decisions based on whether they wanted to pay their employees based on headquarters pay, based on regional pay, and all of the things. It's taken a lot of strategy and discussions around that for companies to reach a decision or a solution around their compensation pay and strategies. And with that, with the remote work model, companies have been able to cast a wider net and been able to recruit a lot of people that perhaps prior to COVID wouldn't have been able to recruit because of the remote work model. And so with that came discussions around, well, are we going to pay someone who lives in Iowa what we're paying our employees who live in Washington? And so companies have really had to think about that and think about their strategy related to that. And then also in terms of getting the talent, they have to retain the talent, right? And so with the economic environment that's in right now, that we're in right now, companies have really had to look closely at merit increases and all of the things. And so while a lot of smaller companies haven't given large increases, some of the mid-sized to larger companies have still given 3 to 5%. That's what we've seen industry-wide around that. And because in order to retain those employees, organizations still have to be competitive because there are so many other organizations who are offering workplace flexibility. And so with companies who are, moving back to in-office and some of the other models, companies have really had to think about and strategize regarding retention strategies. They've really had to think through that. And with that, thinking through how do we keep our tenured employees happy and engaged and all of the things. And so along with that, the finance folks have really been busy looking at the bottom line and helping the organization make decisions related to and to their compensation, to their increases, variable pay, all of the other things that come along with compensation and pay strategy.
Yeah, thank you for sharing that. Before maybe some follow-up questions, Kendra, what do you have to add?
Thanks, Kim. That was awesome. So what I've been seeing is a lot of the clients are doing our salary bands and then leveling jobs. So really being critical on, did we bring in people too high? Did we come on those? And so then looking at them across the board, leveling them, looking at 50%, 75%, across the board of where they're landing, and then having those discussions within their organization. If they have some people that are extremely high, this is why we're not going to be doing merit increases, because we're trying to target 50%, and we've landed at 80% with your position. And so it's just the transparency over pay and just making sure that they have those bands and that they're very strategic with them and that they're very transparent if they aren't able to do those merit based. I've also seen a lot of discretionary bonuses being put in there. So instead of like telling somebody what they're going to get, there's like, hey, we're going to do a discretionary bonus next year. And so that kind of leaves the ambiguity up there of what's that going to be for me? They're doing a bonus, but it's not really leveling or telling me exactly what that's going to be. So I've had those. And like Kim said, the merit and then the COLA. A lot of people are just saying, we are going to land at the COLA, cost of living adjustment this year is where we can be then with our compensation.
Yeah, thank you for sharing. I love obviously the data is helpful, like where people are landing or thinking about, but then calling out transparency, right? That's so important, especially when maybe you aren't doing, increases or smaller increases, and being really transparent with that information. So yeah, anything more you would say on that?
I have one thing to add. A lot of organizations have, in the spirit of transparency, they have decided to do market surveys every year so that they make sure, because with the changing climate, it's changing pretty rapidly. And so in order to remain competitive, one of the things that organizations have committed to do, and some organizations, not every organization, is reviewing the market rates annually.
Yeah, that's great if that can be done right. I know
Mhm.
those surveys can be really costly, and so
Yeah.
that's another, budget impact to consider, but it keeps you up to date with the actual market data from that perspective. Yeah, any questions around kind of compensation from the group?
Oh, I have a quick question. Kim and Kendra, it's Rebecca. Hi. I'm wondering if you're seeing any change with normally developers and like software engineers seem to their, salary bands tend to increase and are very high. I'm wondering if you've seen that slow down because of more introduction of AI and like people kind of backing off from that. And I know there's been a ton of layoffs, or just any other interesting like roles that you're like, oh, that's a surprise, just because if they're doing more salary reviews more regularly.
Mine has been the finance, like the clients that have been across the finance people have actually been going up because I think of all the heavy lifting that they're having to do for this. Literally just did one and it was like the entire finance team was, elevated and they'd been putting in, an awful lot of heavy lifting on this. Also for the software, I've not seen any change in that because normally if it's like a CTO or the higher level software individuals, I'm seeing them still as like very needed and a very high paying position as one of those that they're not going to adjust whatsoever. They might look at admin, marketing, something like that type thing, but the software, if that is the heart of their business, I haven't seen any change whatsoever and can still see people, negotiating salaries at, offers.
What I've seen, to your point, Rebecca, are the lower level software folks positions being or them being downsized, the positions being eliminated because of and to your point about AI, the data-driven positions, because you can get a lot of the information you need from AI now. Organizations are moving away from some of the more entry-level positions because AI can give them what they need, right? And so I think a shift is organizations are focusing on relationship building because that data, AI gives you everything you need, right? And so a lot of companies, like sales roles, even sales roles are going away, some of the lower level, and what the organizations are focusing on are the relationship building skills because you can't replace that, right? You can't replace that. And so that's what I've seen that organizations are working on in sales and the software engineers, the lower level data employees.
Thank you. And then I had another question pop in. It's said they would love to hear about the prevalence of equity COLA versus traditional COLA. And do you need more clarification on that to answer, or does that make sense to you?
I mean, I can speak on it because a lot of my clients do equity and are startups and are offering it. I mean, I've seen a slight decrease in the equity. Like before it was like 500,000 share, kind of time, but it's very like strategic then of like what this amounts to. I mean, I just worked on a project last week on it. And so, I mean, I think I've seen it absolutely like not so throwing out, like it could be kind of numbers, like really tying it in and making sure that they're very conscientious of those. So I might have seen a slight difference in that, but the standard COLA that I see is just the normal COLA, cost of living adjustment then.
Yeah, I would agree with that. Same here.
Thank you. Thank you. So,
Can I jump in to clarify what I meant by equity COLA?
yes, please. Thank you.
So I've been working in nonprofit sector for over a decade, and for the last, I would say, definitely for the last 3 years, there has been a practice of equity-based COLA, which is not a traditional 3% COLA across the organization, but what is the 3% off the payroll, and then divided by the total number of people on the staff. We, as a nonprofit, have implemented it. We've been doing it for the last 2 years. So because the price of the bread has increased the same for you as is for me. So how come you get $5,000 increase and I get $500 increase? So all that to say, I was curious. I know it's been prevalent in nonprofit sector, some places or the other. So I was just curious if you're seeing more of that around. So
I haven't, but thank you for clarifying. That's yeah, I have not in the sectors that I'm working in have not seen that.
No, Kim. Yeah.
No. Mm-mm.
Yeah. Thank you for bringing that up and sharing that term. And yeah, the I hope yeah, that it's that it's in the nonprofit space and maybe catching on elsewhere. So great. So feel free to keep the questions added to the list, but I want to move to the next area. So if you do have more, throw them in and we'll make sure to get to them at the end. So, next up and related is around benefits. And I don't know for you, but this has been a big discussion for us. And so, just with continued rising costs, it can be really hard to balance like between employer costs and employee preferences, and being able to provide value-added benefits, just given the cost increases. So I know many of our clients have seen double-digit increases over the last year or two. Some haven't, which has been great. But Kendra, can you share, more on what your experiences have been and what you see employers prioritizing with regard to
There's a
this?
lot of scurrying during open enrollment when they saw the initials come out and it was like, can you get a broker? Can a broker come in here? Can we find a different one? Can we, it was like really ready to jump ship. Like, who can we go to? Like, UHC, now we're gonna need to go to Aetna. It was a lot of scurrying and can we get on board? Can somebody grab us? And there's a lot of my clients that, are under 25, under 30 employees, small business ones that are, so there's a lot of scurrying of that. And, unfortunately, like, they weren't able to get a broker in. It was too soon. It wasn't enough time for them. And so then we were working on what does it look like? So, again, being transparent to our staff of, hey, like this increase happened. So we're either going to have to change our plans, like we were doing gold and platinum, and we're going to have to, do a silver and something different than this year. So a slightly different offering with what they've had. Or, I mean, I had a couple of them that did have to say, like, we cannot carry this over, we were over 10%. So we're going to have to readjust what we're able to provide to our employees. So, like normally we do 75%, we're going to have to go down to 60%. And, we used to do dependents at 50 and we're going to have to go down to 30. So there's some of those shufflings and it's hard, there's some laws around those of like needing to give notice to individuals of if we're changing those benefits. And, when you're in open enrollment, you only get like 30 days. Sometimes you're lucky if you get 45 in order, to have those conversations with their employees. I also saw a huge increase of FSA and HSA offerings. So some of the employers weren't able to contribute to or add some to it, but they were offering those for employees. So we were educating them on, hey, this is a pre-tax thing. So like really breaking it down. So if you put this in here and then offering, kids is like $2 to $4 an employee a month to have those. And that was very minimal. Also, and like dependent care, any kind of gym kind of stipends that they could do. Again, that was very minimal on employer costs, but something that they could offer as a, as a subset for their employees. And then I had some like alternative medicine. So some people were even like, I can't afford, now paying 40% of my benefits or 30% of them. And so I had a couple of them actually come up with like alternatives. So massage and sorry, I have a blank. The needlework, all of those things that they were able to. Thank you. I'm like, oh, brain dead here. Those things they were offered then at a that they were able to offer to their employees then, instead of them dropping all kinds of coverage. So it was a scurry. It was a scurry because I think I only had one total company that was able to stay under, and all of them like were over 8 to 14% higher this past benefits section.
Yeah, thank you. We saw all of those things too. And I love, again, a theme of transparency around communication, right? Especially when you're talking about, pay.
It never lands easy. And if you're as transparent as you possibly can, and what this means for us is that's an extra 50,000 a year, and having those conversations with employees. So it doesn't seem secretive at all.
Absolutely. Yeah. Kim, what would you add?
So I would agree with what Kendra said. I've seen a lot of the same, of course, the increases and just trying to have as rich a plan as possible while still being cost effective. So employers have really been working hard to pass as much along as possible in terms of the richness of their plans while having moderate increases. I've also seen where especially the remote only or remote first workplaces have removed the commuter benefits and given like an home office stipend, since employees aren't coming into the office now. So they've changed that. And then also what I've noticed is with dependent care, those amounts that employees are requesting for those aren't as high because there's so many employees working from home now. So that's been a benefit for a lot of working parents, to be able to either one, eliminate the dependent care, or two, decrease it so that they don't have as much coming out of their check. So they've seen that sort of an offset, because the cost of benefits have gone up moderately. And now, okay, well, at least now I don't have to have this $5,200 or $2,600 or whatever it is deducted from my check. And I get to see that money and I get to hold it and I don't have to spend it for childcare.
Yeah, those are great. I love all these pointed out, and I going back to kind of adding on the low cost benefits, right? Like the FSA and the HSA, even if you can't contribute as an employer, it is such a low cost per employee to offer it, but can make a lot of difference to employees, right? There was a question on benefits, and they say they, see a lot of employer paid benefits. Is this trend increasing, plateauing, or going away? And Amanda, I don't know if you want to add any more to that, just to make sure we answer. Yeah.
I think that's like the perfect question.
Oh, Kendra, you're muted.
Sorry, to make sure I understand. So you're saying like employer that is offering their benefits. So like there's benefits. I'm sorry. Could you, I guess I don't understand fully then to answer that.
Yeah, I've noticed that in a lot of like the job descriptions, it says that the employer is paying for the employee's benefits. I forget, it's like the monthly premium, or it's them plus the employee or the employee's family members and whatnot.
I mean, I think it really depends on the sector I'm in. So, I mean, my software and my startups that have rich funding right now are still doing 100% employee paid. 75 to 50% of benefits or dependents they're also paying. I don't have any that are doing 100% of families. I think there was one stipend where they like cut off, they were like 1,500 was what they could pay for each of them. And so the employee could decide how they could, pick and choose on that one. But yeah, a lot of them, I do still see employee like 100% or 75 is the minimum I've seen of being contributed to. And then always offering at least a dependent somehow to add to it.
Yeah, I would agree. I haven't seen much change in that. What they were doing pre-COVID in terms of what the employer is paying, I haven't seen much change in that. It's pretty much remained flat for me.
Yeah. And Andrew just made a great point here about, working with your broker to help facilitate a survey so you can help prioritize like what benefits your employees want. We did this year, and, we were faced with the same things that everyone was talking about, from like increases overall. And we used the employee survey to understand what people really wanted. We even shared like, this is what it is, like here's the increase and here's what it is, like what do you prefer, and really took that to heart and made our decision based off of the employee information. So yeah, great point, Andrew. Thank you. Okay, let's see, let's keep going. And Amanda, I see your AI question. I'm going to hold it until we get to the AI section, just so you know I'm not ignoring you. So moving on to hybrid work. We continue to see changes in remote, hybrid, or fully in office requirements for employees. We've swung, from completely at home to somewhere in the middle to now a lot, going back in. I would say, hybrid is probably still a very strong, area that people are, leaning into for their companies. But yeah, what are you, Kim, I'm going to direct this at you now.
Sure.
What are you seeing with regards to hybrid work, and where employers should be focusing on improving hybrid and remote work?
Sure. So of course, since the end of COVID, um, hybrid work has gained popularity. And so a lot of companies, because they realized that employees were just as effective, if not more effective, working remotely as they were in office. But a lot of companies wanted to have the collaboration and all of the things, team meetings and things. And so they require now the hybrid work model. But with that comes along with, well, I've been working from home for the past 3 years. Why do I even have to go in? Even if it's 2 days or 3 days, I was satisfied. I have my child care settled and like all of the things. And so employers are having to contend with that. And so what I've seen when there has been initially, when there is a change from remote only to hybrid, there have been an increase in accommodation requests because employees want to remain in their remote settings. And so on the flip side of that, with health benefits and all of the things associated, the cost associated with that, increases have become a norm for a lot of organizations when they change that remote model and employees starting to go back into the office. So if you haven't done that and you intend to do that, just keep that in the back of your mind. You may start to see that trend from employees because they are totally satisfied working from home, a large percentage of employees. And so with those flexible work arrangements, of course, employees have had the flexibility over the past number of years, 3 years, to kind of get settled into that new model and have become comfortable. Even the ones who were fighting it tooth and nail initially have become quite comfortable in that setting. And so with the flexibility that companies are still trying to offer, but still build collaboration and build teams, companies have ask employees to come into the office so that there could be specific meetings, team meetings where they meet in person and also still maintain a level of flexibility so that employees are able to better balance work and their personal responsibilities. In terms of technology, over the past 3 years, technology has certainly caught up and allowed employees to have that flexibility and be able for there to be a seamless transition from working in office to working remotely. And it has worked very well. One of the positives that have another positive that has come out of remote work and the hybrid work specifically is now companies have been able to optimize office space usage and actually reduce their real estate costs because employees are sharing workspaces. And so while, one group comes in, 2 days a week, the other group comes in 3 days or whatever. And so they're sharing the spaces and organizations don't have to have as much office space now or as many desks as they once had. So that has been a plus. And then in terms of well-being and engagement, employers have still been able to reduce commuting time for employees and still offer greater flexibility with managing work-life balance. And so employees, while initially may not like the hybrid and having to come out of remote only, eventually it settles out. And employees get used to it. But I think a lot of employees also still are on the hunt for remote only work. I hear that from recruiters all the time in my networking and talking to staffing agencies and talking to headhunters. Sorry, I use that term lightly. But when they talk to those candidates, one question that they're always going to get is it a remote based position? Because that's what I'm looking for. And so while companies are moving away from it, there are some companies who are moving towards it because they realize they're getting just as much, if not more, productivity with remote only workforce as they were with the in-office folks. So that's my take on that.
That's great. Kendra, what do you have to add? And I know we have a question, and then I also wanted to talk about what we talked about with like managers and how some of the struggles too.
I mean, I actually had two in the past 2 weeks. candidate gets to the final offer and it was posted, this is in person, this is this, and got to the offer and they're like, is there any flexibility of me being able to do this? And the employer's like, no, we said this is in person, and they actually walked away. And it was just like, I don't know, that was hard because it was like, 4 weeks of that, in there. But I'm still seeing like, certain positions that are dead set on remote only. So we had one that we're, data manager, we were trying to do in office and couldn't get any candidates. As soon as we changed it to remote and hybrid, the floodgates open, the candidates that we needed were there. I'm still seeing the push for remote. I'm still seeing people even negotiating on there of like, I would take a lower salary if you could let me have 1 to 2 days, at the offer. I would still like 1 to 2 days of hybrid or ability to be at home, kind of thing. And they're negotiating at that final stage, kind of thing. So I still see remote being a huge push, hybrid being second, and then the in-office, especially with all my clients that being the third, and far away from that kind of thing then. So.
Yeah, thank you. One of the question, and you kind of answered this with the example you shared with the data manager role, but it was specifically like, are you seeing, roles that are advertised as remote get more high quality applicants, or just more I know more applicants for sure, but did the quality
100%.
change? Yeah.
100%. It's the people that we need. It's that purple unicorn in the field of the cows right there. We're finding, that's what we need. And it's just those like specific locations of the offices are not the same of what we're able to get. And like what Kim said at the beginning of compensation and all of that, we're able to get people from California that can work, in these other positions that, somebody in Iowa wasn't going to come in for. And so, remote is high for them. So we're able to pay lesser than what California is. And they're happy with that. So because they have those offsets of being remote then.
Yeah. And I was talking to a recruiter a couple of weeks ago, and he mentioned that LinkedIn had conducted a survey in terms of looking at what candidates were searching for, and remote work was one of the top filters that employees or candidates were filtering on to find work. So there is a huge percentage of employees that are specifically searching for those remote roles. And I can't remember the exact percentage, but it was somewhere around 50% of employees are looking for that, or candidates are looking for that. Even people who are currently working for organizations who have the hybrid work model, they are searching for remote work. That's been one of the things that LinkedIn has pointed out. And back to your point, Sarah, regarding leaders and managers in this hybrid and remote work environment, there's a lot of training that is required for managers when initially the model was switched to remote. Managers were struggling. Managers were really struggling with how to manage a remote team. And so there's a lot of training and education that's required for the managers, because we all got thrown into this, right? Something absolutely beyond our control. And in order for organizations to keep up and to keep their managers and leaders engaged and to close those skill gaps, because that was a skill all of us had to learn, was this remote work, or most of us, because there were some organizations who were working remotely prior to COVID, but in the midst of COVID, the larger percentage of us were working from home, and those managers who were managing teams, really, a lot of them were struggling. And so they had to adapt their leadership style, even communication strategies and performance management approaches and things like that, in order to keep their team engaged and to keep their team focused on the organization's vision and mission, while keeping them engaged at the same time, because it was a lot of change for everybody. And oftentimes we focus on employees, direct reports, and sometimes we forget about the managers, that they've been thrust into this as well. And so a lot of the organizations that I've supported, that there's been a huge focus on education and helping the managers navigate through this, and building remote work strategies in order to get the team engaged. There's been a lot of focus on that. And I'm sure there will probably continue to be a large focus on education with the managers and getting the folks engaged who are working remote. And then in hybrid, and then with people returning to the office, you have to think about employees becoming disengaged because they're not happy that they're working in office. And so providing education and strategies around, okay, what do we do now? Like, where do we go from here? Because, we've shifted from remote only to whether it's hybrid or in office. Okay, so there's that actively disengaged group. And so what do we do to get the folks, to save the folks that we can? Because if they're actively disengaged, they're going to find another job eventually. But the folks who are partially disengaged and still engaged and highly engaged, we can work on those and then work on the retention strategies in terms of and recruitment strategies so that we get top talent when we start to market our positions. And to your point, Kendra, having to avoid those conversations and waiting until you get to the end of the cycle for candidates to say, hey, would you consider? So it's so important to talk throughout about, I want you to understand this is a hybrid or whatever it is position, and we're going to hold firm on that. So we want to make it so important for the recruiters and the managers and whomever is a part of the recruiting team to make sure that candidates understand that. So you don't spend all the time with candidates only to have them walk away because they wanted hybrid or they wanted remote or whatever the case may be.
That was the thing that was so shocking for us because we got on the job post. The sourcer asked it, the interviewer said it, hey, this is a 5-day-a-week in-person position. Every single touch point had that. And then it came down to, but I want remote. Can I do hybrid? After that, so we're like, whoa. I mean, all the bases were covered. So that was a shocker on that one. So absolutely. I think your point too is like those ones that I have that are gonna remain remote. It's like, okay, everybody did the Zoom get-togethers and the Zoom happy hours and the Zoom parties. So like, let's expand further on like, how do we have these engagement things? So some of mine are like offering, let's do offsite meetings then. So let's meet, in a city quarterly, let's meet, once a year kind of thing, like for people. And I just have one that's like multinational. So it's like in country every quarter and international, we're going to try every 6 months or something then. So. Okay. Doing bigger and things to get the whole team together again.
Yeah, I like that. I think intentional moments of getting together, especially when you have remote team members, and like, what's the purpose of coming together? I think it's so important versus just like having a meeting and bringing everybody in or like telling people to go to the office, like, giving the purpose and the why behind it if you are going to be doing it, and having it be a good experience, right? Because I've talked to so many people who go to work and they sit on a Zoom call with somebody that's either also on Zoom, or in the office on Zoom. And so there's no like collaboration in person. And so, yeah, not that that's always the case, but just thinking about intentional ways that you can, the reason you're bringing people in is often for that kind of collaboration or bringing them together. Goodness, we have some questions. Let's see. So one of them is around, working parents and parents that are working remotely in particular. Have you seen any policies around childcare requirements for individuals that are caregivers and working from home?
100% since the beginning. I mean, I've been remote for 12 years. So I was one of those lucky ones that recession hit in 2008 and decided to do HR and, we've been writing policies. I mean, compliance is my heartbeat, as Sarah knows, I love compliance. So all of the handbooks that I've always had is just like, this is remote, but there is requirements for you to have, a space that you're able to take those calls with clients and coworkers just as if you were in the office. And so can't have the distractions, dog, child, whatever kind of thing, just the professional setting. So, but then there's that flexibility of like, hey, we are remote and we are different time zones. So we have some flexibility in those. So if you want to start super early, maybe take a break during the middle of the day and come back and work. So there is some flexibility in that, but it is when you're in working and you're, going to have client calls or team togetherness, there needs to be that professionalism that you're able to devote your time to the team and not have a secondary thing on the side. Just like we would say with moonlighting, you can't be, accounting for this one and doing books for the same one and billing at that time for the company. So it's similar, and that's how we kind of do it. I'm a working parent and have childcare for mine. And that's how I present it to him. It's the same thing as like moonlighting. So I wouldn't have, something, there's, of course, flexibility, something sick, a one-off kind of thing, nannies call off sick, but yeah, absolutely. I've seen those policies and we have those in a nice way. It's just setting those precedents of, like when you come into the office, what is expected. So the same thing as if you're a remote worker, what's expected then.
So that's what I've seen for US-based companies, but for global companies, they typically don't have a lot of policy around that. Like I've been on calls and there are dogs barking, there are kids crying, and that has been a tough thing for me to get accustomed to, but I get it. I get it. It's their custom. I understand. But that has been through all of this, that has been one of the toughest things for me to get accustomed to is hearing the children crying and it's like, nobody rushes to shush them or anything like that. It's just let them be, and that's just it. So US-based companies, yes, I've absolutely seen that. But for a lot of global companies, I've not seen that. They don't have a lot of policy around, having a quiet workspace or anything like that. So two sides of that coin.
Yeah, thank you for sharing the other perspective, or, the global versus US point of view and perspective there. I think that's helpful. I know there's still some more questions, but I want to make sure we get to our other areas and we'll pull in the questions as we can. So, yeah, compliance, Kendra's favorite topic. Kim is also really excellent at compliance. But we'll start, with you, Kendra. I think it ties in well to this hybrid and remote work discussion, just because we've been seeing companies expand over the last, 4 years and hiring, across all states, even globally at times. And so we see so many that just don't know what they don't know. And there's so many different state and local jurisdictions. There's not a single, there's some federal level things, but there's so many really specific state things. So, just to highlight a few, Kendra,
I know. I'm like,
would
how
you?
do I not talk forever and nerd out and show everybody my love of compliance? I don't know. I mean, it's like you said, it's just been across the board and you don't know what you don't know. And people have the best intentions. Like I'm located in Texas, so this is what I'm going to do. And that should be fine, right? Because my corporation's here, but it's like, no. So I've had so many where there's only a few states that allow monthly payrolls. And so I've had many clients, like at least 5 in the last couple months that come in and that are just paying their staff monthly, and they're in California and New York, and those aren't monthly, payrolls. So I've had those where just like setting up like monthly payroll. I've also had safe and sick leave, people not doing that. So their PTO policy not being robust enough to meet the bare minimum. California has varying ones, 24, 48, 72, even more that has to be banked over. And people aren't having a robust enough PTO that covers that. And then, Minnesota just passed, Illinois passed sick leave. And so it's just like those kinds of things that, the nuances, like you said, you don't know what you don't know. You think that you're covering it by saying I have this, but you're just not meeting the minimum requirements in order to be so. And like a one size doesn't fit all. Yeah, so I guess paydays, frequency, safe and sick leave are the big ones that have come through for me. And I'll stop because I'll get off my soapbox. I love my compliance.
Yeah, I know there's many more, but yeah, I particularly seen those things when I'm talking to clients. And like you said, it's good intent. There's no bad intent. It's just, it opened an opportunity to hire great talent across. And until you know what you're missing, you just don't know. So,
and your small company, you have your payroll set
Yeah.
up. So you bring them in and they're like, well, we did an offer letter. And it's like, it's great you had an offer letter. I'm so thankful. But again, your offer letter, just because they signed it doesn't mean it's legal. So
yeah, absolutely. Kim, what would you add?
I would agree with what Kendra said. There's been a lot of discussion around making certain that our PTO, especially the vacation, like all of the things, the sick pay, all of those things have been big with the clients that I'm supporting. And so we've really had to revamp policies around that to make sure that we were compliant with the state that was the most employee friendly. And so just making certain that all of our policies have been updated, and there are tools you can use for that to make sure that you look at the list of states that you have, especially when you have California especially, everybody talks about California, but whenever that is a part of your workforce, you want to make sure that all of your policies are California friendly, because that's where a lot of organizations have been getting dinged, is for the state of California.
Trying to unmute here. Yes, thank you. And this made me think, because there are so many state specific things, and how you were talking, you were kind of talking from like, what is the one thing we pick that like works across all? Do you, either of you, see a trend in like, okay, from a policy or handbook or compliance standpoint, you find, you know, kind of the strict or like the most employee friendly requirement and you apply that across all states? Or are you seeing companies do kind of an addendum to cover various like state specific things? Like, is there a trend or a theme that you see with that?
What I've seen with the smaller companies, they've just adopted the most employee friendly one and gone with it. Some of the larger companies, not so much. They create the addendums and follow it to the law by state. But smaller companies are just like, let's just, it's going to take us too much time to figure this out, to get systems in place. So let's just do one. And that's what I've seen with my clients.
That's what I had until the end of last year and then the beginning of this year. I know we're only 2 months, just barely 2 months into this, but I had mine, like my bigger companies actually be like, no, I really want to go state specific. So let's make 16 different addendums and we're going to go state specific because I don't want to do this. And it's kind of, I don't know if it's like the comp and it just like, you know, the inflation and all of that. They were like, nope, we want to break it out and just apply it to this one. And it was even like PTO payout. Like if I don't have to do this, and I haven't had that in like 5 years. They're always just like yes or no. They're like PTO applying. If I don't have to do it for the state, I'm not going to. And I was like, wow, like I hadn't seen that in such a, you know, long period of time then.
That's great. Questions, a couple questions. So oh, that was just Michaela. She said she used to keep a note on her whiteboard that said, "What about California?" For that exact reason. So thank you. And then another question: are there any new policies and laws in the pipeline that will affect employees in the future? And thank you. Kylie shared kind of our compliance update that I think you put together, Kendra, at the beginning of the year. But yeah, anything to highlight beyond what you've talked about?
No, I mean, in that one, there's a couple that we're going to hit in March and May. I don't have it off the top of my head, but you know, the states like to throw things out at all times. So there's never just like, you're good on January 1st. You know, it's just, we constantly get our updates, like Lindsay said, through 650, which is great. But like I said, I think there's like 2 offs that were going to be like mid-year, half-year kind of thing that we're going to pass. But no, there's never a perfect one. That's why if you work with Reverb, we always try to let y'all know on our compliance newsletters of anything that came up, you know, from the last time that we did one then. So
yeah, for sure. So yeah, check that out. But then Kendra is our does a quarterly client update for our compliance for our clients. So we're always trying to keep on top, because like she said, it's not that they all set and roll out at the beginning of the year. They come into play at any time of the year. So yeah, and Andrew just pointed out that state specific paid leave laws are still continuing to be rolled out and are different across. Some states are very similar and handle them the same way, and others it's very different. And so again, it's kind of having to look at that and figure out what your policy is, and it meets, you know, the most employee friendly version.
Mm-hmm.
Awesome. Compliance. I love compliance.
I
No.
can't tell if you mean it or not, except like
I love talking to you two about compliance because you bring so much joy to, you know, what could be a really hard subject. So thank you. The smiles on your faces. So our last topic, and with about 10 minutes left because we had so much to talk about, is AI and HR. And so you know, from as HR leaders, we, you know, need to think about AI from a company policy standpoint and compliance and things like that, but also how we can use kind of in our day-to-day to create some efficiency and but also maintain, you know, quality and confidentiality, right? Because we're handling data that's really confidential. So whoever wants to start. I said, let's start with, and I didn't put who. So, as an HR leader, what would you consider about the use of AI in your function and across your organization? Whoever wants to start.
I'll start. So AI has already began and it will continue to have a significant impact. So do HR departments, right? And so AI has the potential to automate repetitive tasks. It should improve decision making because it's all data, right? Everything in HR from onboarding to offboarding, it's all about the data and the numbers and the trends and all of the things. And so it's going to help improve decision making, enhance the employee experience. Because initially, when a candidate reaches out to a recruiter, recruiter reaches out to a candidate, whereas it initially or in times past has been a person reaching out, that can be powered by AI now, right? So those tools, which the HRIS systems or the recruitment tool that companies are using, it's already started to automate a lot of the tasks. You know how you apply and you get replies from the chat bots and all of the things, that's just going to continue to be integrated into those tools, even like candidate sourcing, the assessment. The AI tool is able to analyze like large pieces of data as people are applying. They can look at the, you know, how you normally keep up with your diversity and inclusion, diversity pieces and seeing who you're interviewing, what the race is, what the gender is, which level positions, whereas we had to do that by hand in years past. Like your AI tool can do that all now, and it's only going to get better in terms of analyzing that data. And so a lot of the repetitive things and the manual processes that HR once had to do and had to hire someone to do that, AI has already started to replace those folks and will continue to. That's just the world we live in. And as AI continues to become more relevant and integrated more into organizations' tools, it's only going to be in a larger way than it is currently, even with determining what positions we need to apply. I mean, we need to hire for, which positions have become redundant, whereas that was a manual process where we had to go through and look at all of the things as HR professionals. The tools can do it for you now. Even looking at where the talent gaps are, the skill gaps are, looking at succession, all of those things were once manual. All of those things were manual. And now with AI powered tools, the tool can do it for you, where there'll have to be someone initially where we had 10 people doing that job. You have one person or two people looking at what the data says and then interpreting that and providing that to the decision makers. That's that trend of where we're going to now and where we'll continue to go. And so a lot of the recruiter positions, you all know, a lot of the recruiter positions have gone away. And a lot of times the first positions to be eliminated in organizations have historically been recruiters, and that will continue, except now with the AI tools, there'll be more data and more substance to the data that's being output, so that leaders can make some informed decisions about the future of the organization and future trends and what positions we'll need, and in 10 years or 5 years or 3 years or whatever it is, what will it look like and what will we need to do? Whereas it was left up to us imperfect human beings in times past, now our tools, those tools that have been built, will spit that information out within a matter of minutes. Whereas, you know, in times past, it's taken us weeks and months to get the data that we needed or to make decisions. Now, let me just plug this into this tool. Let it do its job, and boom, you have a report to make a decision. Sorry about that.
Oh, yeah. Thank you.
Mic drop from Kim right there. I love it. Good job. Good job.
Yeah, that kind of fed in or makes me think about the question that came in around like keeping the human touch while still using AI. And in an AI podcast I did with someone, it's like yes, you are still inputting the data, you are still doing that, and then it is required that you take a look at it. And they said kind of treat AI a little bit like an intern and a new to the job type of person. So trust it, give it input, but also you have to review the output, right? And not just 100% trust it. So I thought that was really helpful. But yeah, what else would y'all add anything else
And
about
well,
that?
I think I'm gonna add one more thing. I think to your point, right? Initially, you treat it as an intern, but
Yeah,
over time, it's just going to
he gets
continue to
smarter.
get better. And yeah, you won't have to treat it as an intern. Yeah.
Yeah, it learns, right? And so
Yeah.
yeah, so it's important that you are training it in the
Hmm.
way that it is, giving the right output.
Yeah.
So yeah.
I mean, I
Kendra.
think mine is much simpler, just like job descriptions. Like that's great. We can, you can copy them from job boards and all, but like
Uh-huh.
you can get really in-depth ones and get like your voice in there and doing that.
Hmm.
And then AI, like you said, with the candidates. So like right now I'm hiring 8 candidates or 8 positions for a client. And we do use AI to let them know that we responded, but it's also tagging us back like, hey, this was sent one day. And so it's like, now you need to get back in touch with them. You need to have these interviews. So I think it's still good. And I like the clients that do have that, like, we can use it to this extent, but there still has to be a person here and you still are responsible for doing this because we don't want to get it away and we don't want to turn off, individuals because, oh, AI did this and, there's nobody behind this and, kind of thing. So I think there's like a good middle approach then, especially with like recruiting and talent acquisition part of utilizing it to certain parts, but also you need to be there and you need to represent your company and make sure that you're there. The messaging is you and it's not like robotic that was spit out that doesn't like match with your values and all. So
Yeah.
Yeah,
and I think
absolutely.
having good like parameters on when you can use it, like you said, we let interns or youngers do something and they don't know and data gets everywhere. So there
Hmm.
needs to be parameters on what can be used and who can use it and safeguards in there and making sure that you have it set before you're like, go free and go do this. Make sure that you have, again, compliance, having those like parameters in there so that you have a good, cap on it and everything.
Yeah, yeah, and I like it can be used as a tool to make you more efficient so you can spend more time, having those strategic discussions or those relationship building discussions as an HR leader, as somebody that's recruiting and things like that. So I think, seeing determining that. But Kylie, also if you don't have an AI policy and you've been thinking about one for your company, we put out our policy last year, so feel free. We made it free to anyone, so it's linked in the chat if you're interested. Wow, we got right up to the minute. I think I got all but one question. And I let that person know that they could just email me and we can schedule a time to chat. So thanks so much everyone for coming. Kim, Kendra, thank you. You bring such great energy to these topics and such great experience to share with everyone. So thank you. Grateful to get to work with you and have you here today.
Thanks. Thank you. Thank you. Enjoyed it.
Yeah.
Feelings mutual about working with y'all. Thank you.
Yeah. Well, thank you. And thanks everyone for joining. Kylie included a survey link. We love to hear your feedback. We try to cover topics that we feel like are important to you. So if there's anything you want to hear about, feel free to throw it in there. We do 5 of these a year. So yeah, our next one is coming up in what's the month after March? April. So April will be our next one. So join us there and we look forward to having you as part of our community. So thank you.